The Brewhouse was created to capture and share with you the long history of the Genesee Brewery. But the brewery itself isn't half as interesting as the beer and the people who make it. Visit GeneseeBrewhouse.com. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. We are bookended by the Breakroom today, and we like that. Kim Berntson joining us again. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks for having me back.
Co-hosting Mike Catalana and Pat Duffy. What are you wearing today, Pat?
Winnipeg Jets in the Final Four of the NHL playoffs here.
That's where they came.
The team that was the Atlanta Thrashers, alternate jersey with Atlanta down the side of the arm. So, yeah, Winnipeg, formerly in Atlanta. Not the original Winnipeg, who's currently in Phoenix, who may be moving to Quebec after a couple of seasons. Everybody got that straight? We good?
Hey, we could do
Bufflin? Who is this?
Yeah, Big Buff, Dustin Bufflin.
Look at that.
Nice. We could do the whole show on this topic, and we did the whole pre-show on this topic, talking about what's going to become like a national holiday, I think, Monday, when legalized gambling was settled by the Supreme Court. Kim, as a sports fan, woman of town, what do you want to see it look like? What will you do with this?
I think the key is simplicity, making it as easy as possible for people to go and place a bet or do whatever, however they want to gamble, because I think the more complicated you make it and, the less simple it is, people are kind of just going to stick to doing what they're already doing, whether it's fantasy football or the FanDuel app, or even like if they're degenerate gamblers, going just with their bookie that they've had this whole time anyway. So I think the key is to make it as simple as possible and to be able to do it in a lot of different locations.
Do you gamble, and would you gamble now as a result of this?
I'm not much of a gambler, but I think it would make games a lot more fun to just maybe put a couple bucks here and there and seeing what happens. Because I've done the FanDuel thing a couple times, which it even gets you into sports that you wouldn't necessarily be paying attention to, and games that you wouldn't necessarily be paying attention to across the board. So yeah, I think it's great for certain sports that might not get a lot of attention.
What would you like to see it look like?
I'm with Kim on the idea of the simplicity of it, and I wonder if I want to see it look like this, and then after it happens like that, I'm going to be, are you kidding me? But I'm talking about the guy or the woman who's sitting at the game and he's got his phone, or she's got her phone, and she's like, second quarter, I'm going to do a prop bet on what's going to happen in the second half of this game. Or I'm going to bet on 3 other games while this one is going on. The fantasy football thing is one thing. Gambling is a little different because people started doing fantasy football with no money involved or very limited money. Then it started to find out they could make a lot. I think a lot of people have gambled here and there in different ways. I mean, we have people all ages going to casinos, pulling slot machines, and we've acted like gambling is this crazy thing. I'd like to see it be accessible. I think that's a good point. If it is, and it is really simple, and it's easy to do, I think it's going to be huge.
I mean, baseball has privately been lobbying all of these states for the last couple of years, Major League Baseball, to allow gambling for their, and I will say this, if they can find a way to make it instant on my phone while I'm watching a game, this will save the sport of baseball for this next generation. Could you imagine a situation where Clayton Kershaw is pitching against Bryce Harper, and I have the ability in the moment to make a prop bet on what Bryce Harper is going to do at the plate? Is Kershaw going to strike him out? Is he going to hit into a double play? Is he going to pop a foul ball? It's instant gratification on a sport, which that's their biggest problem, is instant gratification.
And Pat's point about the prop bets is a huge difference. No bookie sitting there writing his slips up is worrying about how many strikeouts that Giancarlo Stanton's going to have in a given game. But with technology now and the ability of all the information that comes through, and nobody's got to sit there and map it out, you can make all that available to people if they want to gamble on it.
And how many people are actively sitting down and watching an entire baseball game all the way through if you're watching it on TV? You might be flipping around channels, you might, check in on the score every now and then, but this is like giving you a chance to see some of these great players coming up that you might not necessarily be paying attention to.
Think about this. If I have the ability to bet whether or not the Yankees will get 3 hits in half an inning, right? And I'm on the edge of my seat as that last batter is up and there's 2 guys there, and then if I lose, I have the ability to try and catch up or let it ride in the next inning. This saves baseball. So even old crotch
pace, yeah.
Well, yeah, but old crotchety guys like you can get together with young guys.
Now,
Who watches an entire baseball game?
Here is the downside. What Pat is describing is a guy in a panic in the fourth inning of a Tampa Bay Rays game because he's got a bet on it. I mean, you can be just enticing people to throw away their money, or, I mean, most people are bad gamblers, right?
Oh,
especially
yes.
on sports. They're really bad at it.
I'm lucky I got both my thumbs still. True.
The bookie gonna be.
You know what? Mine's like kind of old school. I want to see sports bars licensed to do this, and I want to see them get back to the basics of actually being a sports bar. That a lot of these places that advertise themselves, I mean, they put the music on, and they're not really a sports bar. The bartenders don't know where the games are.
But they do need to be licensed. Like if you're going to have the NFL Sunday ticket, like you are regulated.
Right.
How many people? How much you pay? Can't you see sitting at a Buffalo Wild Wings or wherever you have to be, or a place you could sit there and maybe there's machinery right there in front of you. Through them, maybe they get their cut out of that. I don't even know how it works.
Well, the Genesee Brew House.
Genesee Brew House, yes.
But just surround yourself with the experience. And it was one of the things I brought it up. I saw Sal Mariano last night. I thought, you know what? This could be the rebirth of the print paper, where you've got it used to be the daily racing form for the horse races, is you could add more information and stuff and like have pagefuls of the information that you need to try to digest. To educatedly bet a baseball
Got it on
game.
my phone, though,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, but it's still, I think it's a lot to consume.
I'll tell you one other thing you're going to see. You're going to see pregame shows on the major networks that are gambling centric. They already do the fantasy football over the top.
That'd
and all
be its
that
own
kind of stuff.
station.
It's going to be the pregame. That's how they're going to get people. I mean, it used to be Jimmy the Greek, remember? Jimmy the Greek would come on and do his little
And
bit.
wasn't allowed to talk specific
So
lines.
he would say, they're going to win big, Brent, and whatever that he would say. And everybody knew what he was talking about in terms of gambling. Now it's going to be out there in the wide open.
Could do the whole show on this, but we're not. This is the Rochester Press Box presented by the Genesee Brew House. We'll talk about the Bills next. The Press Box, brought to you in part by Connors and Ferris, your workers' comp attorneys. Call 262-COMP, C-O-M-P, today. Welcome back. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brew House, and this portion brought to you by Connors and Ferris. You dealt with this in your closing comments last week about the amount of time that Josh Allen ought to get for the Buffalo Bills in the first year. Vegas comes out with odds 10.5, the over-under on the number of games he starts for the Bills this year, which is the highest among the top 4. That seems really high to me.
So we just talked all about gambling.
Yeah.
Vegas usually is good. They know how to set lines. They know. I don't know what they think they know, but the difference is I think that's way high on Josh Allen, and I think it's because it's not just, I think they're looking and saying, well, who's A.J. McCarron, and Nate Peterman was terrible. That may end up being the case, but I'm of the belief that the Bills organization will protect Josh Allen from himself. If he's not ready, we've talked about it at work. What if A.J. McCarron gets hurt? Do they have a veteran that comes in if Allen's not ready? I don't think they're just sitting there itching to go. I think he's got to play great to be ready to start week number 1. And I don't know if they're going to get that out of him. So think about it. If A.J. starts the season, that means you're benching him by the 6th game. I think that's pretty quick. I would, if we're talking gambling, I would bet the under on that one.
I would bet under 3.5 games for Josh Allen to start. I mean, look at it this way. You have a team with significant holes in it, right? We talked about the offensive line a little bit last week. We're not sure what that's going to do. You don't have a legitimate number 1 speedster wide receiver, which is why you went and got Josh Allen. The guy can throw the ball a country mile. That's his biggest asset in his body, right? So, and on top of that, you have 2 quarterbacks ahead of him on the roster. There is a reason why Nate Peterman is still here. This team does not mess around when they decide somebody doesn't need to be on this roster anymore, and they seem to like him. I cannot envision a scenario where you see Josh Allen, with the exception of catastrophic injury to both quarterbacks, playing in more than 2 games this season.
I agree with you guys, but I do get a little worried because the whole organization is so different than when E.J. Manuel was here and they made that mistake with him, that I wonder, if maybe that kind of inexperience in management and things like that could affect the way that they handle the quarterback situation. But I think you're right. I think that they do still prefer Nate Peterman to come in and save Josh Allen. I hope that's what they think they want to do.
But you're using revisionist history on E.J. Manuel because the Bills were smart at that point. They signed Kevin Kolb, who slipped on a mat, hit his head, blew his knee out, and that was the end of it. And then, even after that, they went out and got Kyle Orton to try and give a little bit of a buffer to help E.J. Manuel when they started that job the next year that he lost to Tyrod Taylor. They know what they're doing. I hope they do. And if they keep Josh Allen sitting, then we know they know what they're doing.
I said when they benched Tyrod, it was about Tyrod. It was not about Nate Peterman. They were tired of seeing Tyrod. When Josh Allen plays, I hope and I trust that they think this way. It's not about McCarron or Peterman. It's when is Josh Allen ready? And I don't think they believe he's ready in the first half of the season. We could all be surprised at training camp or in the preseason. I'd bet the under on the 10.5.
Ideally, I think McCarron, the more McCarron starts, the better off they are. Because it means he's been playing well, I think, to start.
Good point, yep.
And you can...
Allen when he's ready.
Plus, you might get a premium by dealing McCarron at the end of the season if he was really that
It's
good.
happened before that's happened, and then you say maybe this can happen for the Bills.
This is the Rochester Press Box. We are presented by the Genesee Brew House, and this portion brought to you by Connors and Ferris. Like it or not is next. Here's the Press Box trivia question brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Here's the Press Box Trivia answer brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Welcome back. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brew House. Like it or not, Kim, we got the Rochester Knighthawks playing for a championship.
Doing pretty well. It's great. They put on a great product. They have very loyal fans. It's a good time. I mean, if you can get out there and catch, I believe they play the best of three series. The second game's going to be here in Rochester in the first weekend in June, I think.
Yeah, like the arena availability is so tough that, I mean,
Well,
by the time this thing could end, the Knighthawks could be like 5 weeks removed from qualifying.
I do like that they make their championship game a series, only because it's a little bit more exciting, and that game 3 could come down to the wire. And I've been to a couple of their championship games, and it's a lot of fun. And like I said, they draw pretty well. There's a lot of lacrosse fans in this town, so get out there and see it if you can.
I remember talking to Jody Gage when he's running both teams, and he's telling me, he says, I'm a hockey guy. He says, but this indoor lacrosse, boy, that is good.
And
Like, he
they
was
play
a big
music the
fan
whole
of it.
time.
But you have to understand the way the schedule is. These guys have regular jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not the full time. They make a ton of money. There's a few guys who've made a lot of money. So the idea, and they definitely want weekend games for attendance too. So that's how you get spread out for 3 weeks.
Hey, like it or not, Carrier Dome improvements.
Well, it needs it, right? I mean, the only thing about the Carrier Dome, we were laughing being at the Jerry World Dome. The only comparison between the two places is they have a roof and they play some version of football in both places. It needs a lot. It needs a ton. It still needs a ton. Is it not comical that a place called the Carrier Dome has not had air conditioning?
Bro,
It's one of the most unique venues in college basketball.
I'm like
You gotta keep it
Patrick
around.
Ewing in a sweatsuit in that place in the middle of
Crazy.
February watching a Cuse basketball game. Why am I sweating? It's
How
5
about,
degrees outside.
how about football in September, sometimes in October? It's just brutal in there. That's not coming until 2022. So they are changing the roof. They're changing the way they do things, changing the lighting. It needs all that video board. I'm happy.
Well, they put it in 1980. I don't know. That's a coincidence that was the 80s was a good decade for Syracuse athletics.
There was nothing like that. I mean, and also they were on TV all the time in the Big East, and players. I remember Stevie Thompson saying, "My family will see me more on TV here than if I played in LA, where he was from, because Syracuse was big, and the Dome was its own thing. I mean, it's unique. It's not as unique
Even the football
anymore.
team was good.
Yeah. different time.
Pat, like it or not, these Stanley Cups.
Oh, I'm really enjoying the Stanley Cup playoffs that are happening right now. It's funny. It's a tale of two conferences, right? You have the Lightning and the Capitals, two teams that are there all the time. Over the last 10 years, they've been very good. I mean, as we're taping this, the Caps are up 2-1. I'm assuming, based on history, the Caps will eventually lose this series in 7 games or whatever. But in the Western Conference, it's really interesting. You have a team in Winnipeg that was in Atlanta only a couple of years ago, and a team in Vegas that didn't exist as of 15 minutes ago. So you have stars that you're aware of, guys you've seen before on one side, and on the other side, nobody knows any of these guys. I mean, I'm a diehard hockey fan, and I have to look down at my phone every once in a while to see who the heck is the second assist for Las Vegas or who the heck just laid that hit out in Winnipeg. But I'm enjoying it. I'm having a good time.
And nobody knows anything about the Winnipeg Jets. This is Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brew House. Unfinished Business is next.
Here is the MVP Experience Stat of the Week, brought to you by Sport Clips, where it's good to be a guy. No appointment ever needed.
Dunkin's new Cosmic Culotta. Far out flavors that are out of this world. And now, any small culotta is $2. The universe runs on Dunkin'.
Welcome back. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brew House. This portion, Unfinished Business, brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts. America runs on Dunkin'. Mr. Duffy.
Announcement was made on Wednesday. Thurman Thomas will finally have his jersey retired by the Buffalo Bills. No one will wear 34 ever again, and that'll go up alongside Jim Kelly officially and Bruce Smith. His 78 has been retired. Also O.J. Simpson, but we're not going to talk about that. Nobody's worn it since O.J. has. So you have Thurman, you have Jim, you have Bruce. Normally these things go in threes. And if you've noticed, nobody since Jim, Thurman, or Bruce retired have worn 12, 78, and 34. There's one glaring person missing from this. A guy whose jersey's been worn by several people. People so bad, last name Moore, tight end, that you forgot even dressed for the Bills. Andre Reed is not going to get his jersey retired by the Buffalo Bills. And there are a lot of people that are going to be upset by that. But I'm going to be honest with you. I'm completely fine with it. I know that he's a Pro Football Hall of Famer, but of all of those guys that played for those 4 Bills Super Bowl teams, Andre was always the odd man out. You had Jimbo, right? Jim Kelly. You had Bad Things Man Bruce Smith. You had Squirmin' Thurman Thomas. And it was Andre. He's got to have a name. It's just Andre Reed. He's not going to have his jersey retired, and I'm okay with it. And you should be okay with it too, because there are legends upon legends, and then there are guys that made the Hall of Fame. And I think Andre's just a guy that made the Hall of Fame.
Somebody's bitter he didn't get his autograph.
That's also a true story, but we'll get into that later.
Well, when it comes to the debate, who's the greatest NBA player of all time, I would say that the majority of people would say Michael Jordan. And those same guys will make the argument, well, LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, they didn't have the character that he had, or the leadership, or the antics on and off the court. Well, good news, guys, because it may not be quite the way you remembered it. We all like to remember the greatest times, the most epic moments of Michael Jordan's career. Well, ESPN and Netflix have teamed up to bring us all a 10-hour documentary on the career of Michael Jordan. And I encourage dads to sit down with their sons, who might have different opinions on the greatest NBA player of all time, to watch this documentary. And I mean, we've seen these documentaries dive deep into these guys' personal lives and maybe highlight the good along with the bad. And I hope that for some of those guys that make the argument that Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time, maybe take a step back and see that some of these new guys coming up, like LeBron, well, not coming up, but LeBron James and other guys along the way, maybe they're nailing it more than you think they are.
Yeah, that's so true, because they were doing, how many people romanticize about the old Lakers, Celtics, Showtime, and all those games.
You go
back and you watch
times.
that video, and it's like, boy, those guys are playing in slow motion. It's like, it changes.
Yeah. It's different in your memory than when you actually sit back and take the time to look back at it.
I've been told that I have an irrational love of the Philadelphia Eagles. And, so they win the Super Bowl this year, and it's nonstop. At work, they kill me all the time. I can't go a day without somehow mentioning that they won the Super Bowl. But I was thinking about the Eagles when I watch a team I don't like, but I respect, and that's his Boston Celtics. And his Boston Celtics when he's fanboy sometimes. Here's the idea. When you look at these two teams in the playoffs, and as we're recording this, they're up 2-0 on the Cavs. The Eagles were a really good team, well coached, but their top player, the guy who earned them home field, or in this case home court, was injured. And then people doubted them right away. Teams actually tried to lose because they said, we can get the Eagles in the first round. They tried to lose to get the Boston Celtics in the first round. And then they won a close series or a close game. And then they moved on, and they still were underdogs. And they wiped out my Sixers easily. And the Eagles ended up wiping out the Minnesota Vikings. And they're underdogs, but they play with a sense of purpose and a sense of teamwork that you see from a team that has had to find a way to believe. Sure, their top talent is gone, but they're playing maybe more like a team than they've ever played. There's major comparisons. The Eagles went on to win the Super Bowl, and they won it because you only had to beat Tom Brady one time. The difference for the Celtics is, can they get by LeBron and then beat the Warriors, it looks like, 4 times? But I got to give them credit. They are playing like a team. They are playing like a well-coached group, and they are playing like a team that has a purpose.
This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse and Unfinished Business, brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts. Kim, thanks again.
Thank you
As
for
always,
having me.
guys, good job.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. See you next week for the Rochester Press Box.